The first time I read that name, the voice you're about to hear is mine. But it wasn't always like this. Clean, contained, held inside words. For a long time, it was just a scream I couldn't let out. It was 3:17 a.m. when I opened the night shift report. I did this at the start of every shift. It was protocol. You read, you sign, you move on. Simple as that. 22 beds, each patient's status, incidents, transfers, discharges, a cold list of living bodies trying to keep living. But that night, when I reached field 17 in the system, I stopped. My fingers froze over the keyboard. There was a name I didn't recognize. A patient, 7 years old, registered at 2:03 a.m. in room 14B. Diagnosis, unspecified. Next of kin, not listed. I stared at that field for too long because room 14B had been empty for 3 weeks since the electrical fire that destroyed the wiring and left the space sealed off by the health inspector. Nobody went in there. Nobody was supposed to go in there. And yet, there was a name. There was a child. I pushed back my chair. I walked to the hallway. And when I opened the door to 14B, what I saw changed everything I thought I knew about the place where I worked, about what can live in the space between one breath and the next. Let me tell you what St. Benedict's Hospital was like before all of this. Not the hospital. From the institutional posters, the ones with smiling nurses and natural light pouring through panoramic windows. Not that one. I mean the real hospital, the one that exists after visiting hours end and the main hallway cuts half its lights to save on electricity. I've worked there for 6 years. Night shift nurse, pediatric ward. I clock in at 10 p.m., clock out at 6 a.m., or whenever the next shift shows up, which doesn't always happen on time. I know the name of every corner of that place. I know which door creaks the loudest. I know the hallway at the back has a different echo depending on the humidity. I know the central elevator takes exactly 43 seconds to travel from the basement to the 3rd floor because I've counted many times on those nights when the silence gets too heavy to ignore. St. Benedict's has 118 beds, 18 of them in the pediatric ward. We run 4 nurses per shift during the day, 2 at night. That particular week, it was me and Daniel, a 41-year-old man, father of twins, who wore earbuds through almost the entire shift and rarely said more than necessary. He wasn't rude. He was just someone who had learned, as I had, that the silence of the night shift is its own entity, and that disturbing it without cause creates a kind of anxiety you carry for hours afterward. Daniel was my partner, and he was there that night. That's important. Remember that. The shift started normally. I arrived at 9:48 p.m. I always arrive early. Old habit. Punched in, changed in the locker room, and went straight to check the charts before officially taking over. The nurse going off duty, Claire, gave handoff in a low voice, as usual. Bed 3, running a fever. Bed 9 just got morphine. Bed 12 asleep. Everything calm. Everything as expected. She grabbed her keys, grabbed her bag, said "Good night," without looking up, and walked out. Claire never liked to linger during shift transitions. None of us do, honestly. There's something about that moment when the night shift is almost starting but hasn't officially begun. That makes the air feel heavy, like the hospital knows the watch is changing and takes advantage of the gap. I sat down at the nursing station, opened the system, started reading through bed 16. Everything was right. Names I recognized, situations I'd been tracking over the previous days. In field 17, system field, not a physical bed, the name appeared. Valentina, 7 years old. Admission, Air 203 AM. Room 14B. I blinked, read it again, then looked at the clock on the wall. 9:52 p.m. That admission, if it was real, had happened 19 hours before my shift started, during the day shift, during a period when there were doctors, residents, technicians, administrative coordinators. Enough people to log an admission, a guardian, a diagnosis, and yet the fields were blank. Next of kin, diagnosis, attending physician, just the name, the age, the room, the sealed room. I should have called the charge nurse immediately. I know that now. I know it as I write these words with hands that still tremble on certain nights. But in the moment, what I did was what any rational person would have done. I assumed it was a system error. St. Benedict's runs record software that's been updated 3 times in the last 2 years, and every update left behind a new trail of bugs. Once the system duplicated every patient in bed 7 for an entire week. Another time, it erased the discharge records for a boy who was already home asleep in his own bed, while the system insisted he was still admitted. Errors happen. Data shows up where it shouldn't. So I did what I would do for any inconsistency. Wrote it in the physical log, flagged it to discuss with the charge nurse in the morning, and went to do my first round. Daniel was in the back hallway, checking bed 8. I waved at him as I passed. He raised 2 fingers without removing his earbuds. Minimal communication. Normal. I went through the rooms. 1, 2, 3. Child with fever, sleeping. 4, 5. Quiet. 6. A girl who woke when I switched on the check flashlight looked at me for a second with that confused expression of someone who doesn't know if they're still dreaming, then closed her eyes again. 7, 8, 9. Daniel had already been through some of them. I kept going. When I reached the side hallway, the one leading to room 14B, I stopped. The yellow interdiction tape was still there, crossing the door, as always. The health inspector's notice, the padlock on the handle, but there was light under the door. A thin line, almost imperceptible, the kind of light that bleeds from a room when someone left an emergency lamp on, or when the hallway light outside catches at a specific angle. I stood staring at that line of light for too long. Then I told myself, reflection, angle of the hallway, nothing more. And I went back to the nursing station. The second time I looked at the system, the record was still there. It was 11:14 p.m. Daniel was in the central hallway. I had just finished preparing the midnight medications and took the opportunity to reopen Valentina's chart, thinking maybe a new field had been filled in. Sometimes the system updates with a delay, especially when the doctor logs in from a phone outside the hospital. But there was nothing new, just what had been there before. Except for one thing, the last activity field had been updated. Before, it was blank. Now it read, 11:07 p.m., chart viewed. No user ID. Someone had opened that chart 7 minutes before me. Someone the system didn't recognize. I stared at the screen for a moment, then looked at the hallway. Daniel was with his back to me, writing something on the notes board. The nursing station was me, and the computer, and the silence of the hospital at night. I closed the chart, opened it again. The activity field now read 11:14 p.m. Chart viewed. User Anna Reeves. That was me. And directly below, 11:07 p.m. Chart viewed. User unknown. I picked up the phone and called IT support. Nobody answered. Of course, it was almost midnight. The hospital's IT support runs until 10 p.m. I wrote everything in the log. Date, time, description. Saved it. Did the midnight round, trying not to think about who or what had accessed that system before me. I want to be honest with you about something. I am not the kind of person who believes in ghost stories. Never have been. I grew up in a religious family, was an altar server at 8, but it's been a long time since my relationship with the invisible was anything more than mutual indifference. I've worked in a hospital for 6 years. I've watched people die. I've watched people who shouldn't survive. I've worked shifts where we lost 3 patients in the same night, and you have to keep functioning, keep checking the vitals of the ones still here, because that's what the job demands. In that kind of environment, you learn to be pragmatic. You learn that the human body is a surprisingly resilient and surprisingly fragile machine at the same time, and that most of what seems inexplicable has an explanation. It just hasn't arrived yet. That's what I believed. That's what I kept telling myself as I did the midnight round and tried to ignore the fact that room 14B was at the end of the side hallway and that I needed to pass it to check beds. 13 and 15. I walked past quickly, didn't look at the door, but I heard a very faint sound, almost nothing, the kind you can only hear because the rest of the hallway is completely silent. Breathing, steady, slow. From the other side of the door, I stopped. My heart beat twice very fast and then steadied. Because that's what training does. It doesn't leave you in panic. It leaves you functional. I stopped. I breathed. And I thought realistic possibilities. An animal had come in through a gap in the window. It had happened before. A cat once. An admitted child had left their room and wandered into the sealed space. Serious problem, but explainable. A maintenance worker was doing a nocturnal inspection without notifying anyone. Annoying, but common. Possibilities I was not considering. The 7-year-old registered in the system with the sealed room. was on the other side of the door. I knocked 3 times, firm, but not loud. I didn't want to wake the patients in nearby rooms. "Who's in there?" Silence. The breathing had stopped. I waited. 5 seconds. 10. Nothing. I picked up my radio and called Daniel. He appeared 2 minutes later, earbuds around his neck for the first time that night, expression mildly annoyed at being interrupted. "What is it?" "I heard something inside 14B. Daniel looked at the door, at the yellow tape, at the padlock. Animal, probably. Last month, there was a pigeon. It was breathing, Daniel." He looked at me, that look that means, "You're tired. Everyone gets like this on the night shift. That's not your fault." "I'll get security to take a look," he said, more to reassure me than because he believed there was anything there. "Wait here." I waited, stared at the door for 4 full minutes, and that was when I noticed the line of light I'd seen under the door earlier. It was gone. The room was completely dark now. The security guard was a man named Gary, mid-50s, who has worked at St. Benedict's longer than any nurse I know. He arrived with the spare key to 14B, which theoretically existed only in the administration's possession. But Gary has keys to everything. He's the kind of person a hospital accumulates after decades. He opened the door. The room was empty, empty. Dark, smelling of dust and old wiring. The same smell since the fire. The 2 beds were stripped of their mattresses, as always. The visitor chair was folded in the corner. The window was closed and latched. Gary made a full sweep of the room, switched on his flashlight, looked under the beds, in the bathroom. Door open, empty too. "Nothing," he said. Daniel looked at me without saying anything, but the message was clear. I went inside. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to confirm for myself. I walked to the window, checked the latch, closed, looked at the floor for anything out of place, and then I saw it. In the dust that had settled on the floor since the room was sealed. 3 weeks of dust, because no cleaning crew had been inside. There were marks, footprints, small, the right size for a 7-year-old child, going from the door to the center of the room and stopping there in the middle of the empty space. Not continuing, not turning back, as if someone had reached that point and simply ceased to exist. I didn't say anything to Daniel and Gary about the footprints. I know that sounds wrong. I know the right decision would have been to point, document, call someone. But there was something in that moment. A specific weight in the air of the room. A quality to the silence that made me want to leave quickly and not speak about what I'd seen until I'd processed it alone. Gary locked the room. We returned to the hallway. He said something about pigeons, about how sometimes they come in through the window frame gaps and leave the same way, without leaving an obvious trace. I agreed. Daniel went back to the central hallway. I went back to the nursing station, opened the system. Valentina's chart was still there, but now there was a new entry in the notes field, a field that only physicians can fill in, that requires a login with medical license credentials that the system automatically audits. The field was filled. No doctor's signature, no medical ID, No automatically generated date and timestamp, as there should have been. Just text, 3 words. She was waiting. I closed the laptop, picked up my log, wrote down everything I'd seen. The footprints, the 3 words, the light that had vanished, sat staring at the wall until 4:30 a.m. And then the system triggered an alert. Valentina, room 14B. Vital sign detected. If you made it this far, you already know you're not going to be able to stop now. Part 2 reveals what was inside room 14B and why the system's records began changing before I even arrived at the hospital. Don't miss the next part. Subscribe now. This kind of story doesn't stay available forever. Vital sign detected. 2 words that, under any normal hospital circumstances, mean a monitor is working. An electrode is attached to skin. A heart is beating and being recorded. 2 words that exist inside a clear, documented protocol. But room 14B had no monitor, no electrode. It had dust, mattress-stripped beds, and footprints that ended in the middle of the room. I stared at the alert on the screen long enough for it to flash 3 times. The system generates vital sign alerts when the bedside monitor records a heart rate below 40 or above 180, or when it detects an absence of signal for more than 90 seconds. Then it chimes, not a loud alarm, a discreet beep at the nursing station so as not to startle the other patients. The beep sounded. Daniel looked up from the other side of the station. 14B, he said. 14B, I confirmed. Neither of us moved for a second. Then Daniel removed his earbuds with a slowness that told me he was also uncomfortable, and stood. I'll check. I'm coming with you. He didn't protest. That, more than anything else, told me he had noticed something was wrong that night. The side hallway was colder than the rest of the hospital. I noticed that as soon as we turned the corner. Not dramatically cold. Not the kind of cold that appears in horror films, where the character sees their own breath and the audience knows something terrible is about to happen. It was just a few degrees lower. The kind of difference you notice because you've moved from one space into another. Later, when I asked maintenance, they said it was because the ventilation in that hallway had been shut off since the room was sealed. Less circulation of warm air. Logical, explainable. In the moment, it just made me walk slower. Room 14B was at the end of the hallway. The yellow interdiction tape was still there. Gary had relocked it after our earlier visit. The padlock caught the hallway light and gleamed in the dark. And under the door, the line of light had come back. Daniel stopped. I looked at him. He was staring at the line of light with an expression I had never seen on him before in 6 years of working together. Not exactly fear, more that expression people make when reality presents information that doesn't fit any available category. The light was off when Gary locked it. I said quietly, "I know," he answered, just as quietly. "There's no functioning electrical installation in that room. The wiring was cut at the source after the fire." "I know," he repeated. We both stood, looking at the line of light, and then it changed. It didn't go out. It didn't flicker. Its intensity shifted. from a white-yellow light to something warmer, more amber, like the light of a lantern or a candle. And within that shift, in the space of light under the door, a shadow appeared, small, the right size for a 7-year-old child. Still, on the other side of the door, Daniel reached for his radio, tried to reach Gary. Static. Tried again. More static. This happened sometimes in the side hallway. The building's structure interfered with the signal, especially since the new electrical panels were installed last year. Engineering thing, explainable thing, but the shadow remained. "I'll get Gary in person," Daniel said, and I could tell from the tone. Completely neutral, completely professional. That he was doing what I had done hours before, managing the response, holding to protocol, not letting panic decide over reason. "Will you stay here?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to say, let's both go find Gary. Let's both leave this hallway right now. Let's call the charge nurse and let someone with more authority decide what to do with a sealed room that has light and a vital sign and a child's shadow. But there were patients in nearby rooms, and safety protocol said one of the nurses had to stay in the ward. "I'll stay." Daniel left. I stayed, and the shadow didn't move. For 2 full minutes, it stayed exactly where it was, in the center of the light gap under the door, motionless, as if it knew I was outside and was waiting for me to make some kind of decision. Then I did something I still can't fully explain. I moved toward the door, 1 step, 2, until I was perhaps half a meter from the yellow interdiction tape, and said very quietly, almost whispering, "Valentina." The shadow moved. It wasn't an abrupt movement. It wasn't the shadow lurching toward the door or retreating to the back of the room. It was a tilt, like someone turning their head to the side when they hear their own name. That reflexive, involuntary movement that happens before the person thinks to react. The shadow tilted and stayed that way, tilted, waiting. I needed to breathe. I realized I'd been holding my breath without meaning to. I let it out slowly. "Are you okay?" Silence. Then, and I swear to you this happened, I swear my memory of that moment is completely clear, even though part of me very much wished it weren't. A sound, a knock, just one, soft, like an open palm pressed flat against wood. From inside the door, I stepped back. My heel found the wall behind me. There was nowhere further to go. And then the line of light went out. The hallway went completely dark for exactly 3 seconds. I counted automatically, the same way I count the 43 seconds of the elevator. Before the emergency lights came back on with that red-orange glow that exists for power failure situations. But the power hadn't failed. The rest of the hospital was still normally lit. Only that hallway. And when the red glow steadied, I looked at the space under the door. The line of light was gone. The shadow was gone. And there was, on the floor of the hallway, on the outside of the door, on my side, a handprint, small, damp, as if someone had pressed their palm against the floor, the right size for a 7-year-old child. Daniel came back with Gary 4 minutes later. They found the hallway lights back to normal. They'd come back on their own while I stood looking at the mark on the floor. I had photographed it with my phone. The photo was there. The damp mark, the dusty hallway floor, the yellow interdiction tape in the background. Gary looked at the mark for a long moment. "Condensation," he said finally. "The hallway ceiling has a leak. Happens sometimes. The shape of a hand." The condensation had formed exactly the shape of a hand, with 5 fingers, the right size for a child. I didn't say that out loud. Daniel looked at me. He had seen the photo and also said nothing. Gary opened the room again, went in, came out 30 seconds later. Nothing, same as before. But this time I went in too, and this time I went straight to the spot where the footprints had ended on our earlier visit. There were more footprints now, the same ones that ended in the center of the room. But now there was a second set, starting from that same central point and going toward the window, ending at the wall beneath the closed, latched window, as if the child had arrived at the center of the room, stood still for a while, and then walked to the wall, as if she had been looking for a way out. At 2:15 a.m., I called the on-call charge nurse. I waited until that moment because I needed to organize what I was going to say. There is an art to communicating strange occurrences to hospital administration without sounding like someone who needs psychological evaluation, and I needed that art working for me in that moment. I described Valentina's chart, the vital sign detected by the system, the room inconsistency, the possible marks on the floor that would need to be documented in the morning. The charge nurse on call, Dr. Fernanda Quiroz, listened to everything in silence. "I'll call emergency IT support," she said. "Must be the system. We've had this kind of ghost record before. A duplicate entry from another hospital. Data from a patient who was transferred but never arrived. The record comes before the person. A transfer would go to a sealed room?" A pause. "No," she admitted. "It wouldn't." "And the vital sign?" Another pause. Longer. "I'll check the system from my access. Keep an eye there." She hung up. I stared at the system. Valentina's chart now showed a new populated field. Date of birth, unavailable. Original admission date, unavailable. And a field that hadn't existed before, that I had never seen in 6 years of that hospital's system. Previous transfer date, March 14th, 2017. I did the math quickly. 7 years ago. Exactly 7 years. I need to stop here and tell you what I knew about St. Benedict's before that night. Every hospital has stories. It's inevitable. They're places where people arrive at the worst moments of their lives and sometimes don't leave. Anyone who works in a hospital long enough hears everything. I heard about the 3rd floor of Block B that had something, without anyone being able to specify what. I heard about a doctor who had lost a patient and kept doing rounds in that ward for weeks, as if waiting for the patient to come back. Stories, the kind every place accumulates. But there was one specific story about St. Benedict's that I had heard in my first year and then deliberately forgotten. A child, a long admission, a family that stopped showing up. I didn't remember the details. I didn't want to remember. It's the mechanism we develop, that we need to develop. Because if you hold onto every story of every patient who didn't get the outcome they deserved, you lose the ability to work. But when I saw that date, March 14th, 2017, something at the back of my memory knocked. I knew that date. I didn't know from where, didn't know how, but I knew it. I went to the physical records room. The hospital still keeps physical charts for 10 years before digitizing and destroying them. 2017 was there. I started looking, and then my phone vibrated. Text from Dr. Quiroz. Its support checked. No ghost record. The system recognizes the entry as legitimate, but there's no identified user who created it. It's as if the chart generated itself. I stopped in the middle of the records room, stopped and stared at the 2017 folders without picking up any of them, because I had just realized if the chart had generated itself, if no user had created that entry, then the vital sign the system had detected at 4:30 a.m., the signal that had triggered the alert, was real, not an error, not a ghost record. There was something alive in that room, or something the system recognized as alive, and I had called out to that something by name, and that something had answered. It was 3:48 a.m. when I went back to the side hallway. I don't know what I expected to find. I think I expected the normal hallway. Quiet, lit, empty. I think part of me wanted to confirm that I had spent the last few hours in a state of hypervigilance caused by overwork and a system inconsistency that had a technical explanation I just hadn't found yet. The hallway was quiet, lit, almost empty, almost. She was standing at the end of the hallway, in front of room 14B's door. On the outside, on my side, her back was to me. She was small, the right height for a 7-year-old. That stage, between the preschool years and the years when children start growing too tall to age by sight alone. Her hair was dark and long, loose, falling to the middle of her back. She wore something white, not the modern white of a hospital gown, but a faded white, almost yellowed, the kind of fabric that brings to mind clothes from decades past. She was still, completely motionless. My first instinct was professional. Child out of her room, alone, in the middle of the night. Assess, approach, identify, calm. I took a step. She didn't move. Another step. Nothing. When I was about 6 meters away, I stopped because I noticed something. The hallway lights, fluorescent, white, uniform, cast shadows from everything, from the support tables, from the folding wheelchairs against the wall, from the medication cart parked near room 12. She cast no shadow. The light passed through her, as if she didn't fully occupy the space where she stood. I stopped breathing, and she turned her head slowly, very slowly, not completely, just enough to show the profile of her face. And in that profile, I saw an expression I still cannot adequately translate into words. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It wasn't that empty expression horror uses as a shortcut. It was waiting. It was recognition. It was the face of someone who had waited a very long time for one specific thing and had just realized that thing had finally arrived. And then she opened her mouth and said my name. My name. She said my name with a voice that didn't match the size of the body it came from, not the voice of a 7-year-old child. That slightly elevated pitch, that way of weighing syllables that hasn't quite learned the right pressure yet. It was lower, slower, like someone who hasn't used their voice in a long time and is testing whether it still works. Anna Reeves. Just that. 2 words. My full name. Not Anna, as they call me at home. Not Reeves, as colleagues sometimes call me. Anna Reeves. The complete name, as it's written on official documents, as it appeared in the system. When I had accessed her chart hours earlier, I didn't move. Not because I had decided not to move, but because my body had made that decision on its own, and it was a decision I couldn't override by will. I stood still, watching her profile. The absence of shadow, the dark hair and faded fabric, and the feet I noticed now were bare on the cold hallway floor. She was still almost in profile, hadn't turned her face fully toward me, as if there were an unspoken rule about how much of herself she could reveal at once. You came. Not a question, a statement. And then, before I found any word my mouth was capable of producing, she took a step toward room 14B's door, and the door with the padlock, the door Gary had locked, the door with no functioning electrical installation and no way of being opened from inside. Opened. She went in and turned around, and I saw her face. I'll describe what I saw without softening it, because softening it would do a disservice to the moment, and because if I try to smooth it over, I'll distort it. It was the face of a 7-year-old child, dark hair framing an oval face, small, with a slightly upturned nose and cheekbones that in any other context you would recognize in a second as a normal, healthy child on the way to a birthday party or asleep in the back seat of her parents' car, except for the eyes. The eyes were the wrong color, not wrong in the dramatic sense of horror films. Not black, not red, not void of an iris. They were brown, like normal eyes, but there was something in them I could only describe as excessive depth, like looking at a hole in the ground and realizing it goes deeper than it should, deeper than the available physical space would allow. And there was the expression I had said before it was waiting, that it was recognition. But now that I saw the full face, I saw something else too, layered over the other two. It was exhaustion, the kind that doesn't come from a bad night's sleep or a hard week, the kind that comes from waiting for something for a very, very long time. She looked at me. I looked at her, and she said, "You need to read." I didn't go into the room. That needs to be clear. I didn't go in. I stood in the hallway, with the open door between me and her, and some instinct, not exactly fear, more a kind of physical certainty that crossing that threshold would be a decision without return, kept me on the outside. "Read what?" She didn't answer with words. She looked down at the floor of the room and back at me. I lowered my eyes. On the floor of the room, among the footprints, going to the window and back, there was something that hadn't been there either of the 2 previous times I had entered that space. A folder. Thin. A chart folder. Faded yellow. The kind the hospital used before the digital system, with a label on the front. I didn't need to go into the room to read the label. I was close enough. Valentina Correa, Lima. 7 years. Admission 02/03/2017. Discharge. The discharge field was blank. I looked at her. She continued watching me with that expression of exhaustion and waiting. "You need to read," she repeated, and this time there was something different in the tone. Not urgency, not threat, but a quality I recognized after years in a hospital. The tone of someone who is running out of time. I crossed the threshold. The air changed the moment I stepped in. Colder, stiller, with that specific quality of spaces that have been closed for a long time. I picked up the folder from the floor. My hands were steady. That surprised me. She was still standing near the window. She didn't approach me. She didn't retreat. She just stayed where she was, watching me. I opened the folder. The first page was the admission sheet. Valentina Correa Lima, born September 8th, 2009. Admitted on February 3rd, 2017, with a diagnosis of high fever of undetermined cause. Next of kin, Marcia Correa Lima. Mother. I flipped through clinical progress notes, medications, lab results, an admission that had started as a fever and stretched over weeks while the doctors tried to identify the cause. Nursing notes, physician notes, all in order, all within protocol. Until the last week of March, the notes stopped. There was no discharge note, no transfer note, no death note. The notes simply stopped on March 21st, 2017, mid-sentence, in the handwriting of a nurse whose name I didn't recognize. Patient showing significant improvement over the last 2 days. Family. And that was it. The sentence didn't finish, as if whoever was writing had been interrupted and never came back to complete it. I turned more pages. Blank. All blank until the last one, which had just a single line in handwriting different from everything before it. Not a doctor's or nurse's handwriting, but a child's. Large, uneven, the A and E still without their adult form. Nobody saw me leave. I raised my eyes from the folder. She was still near the window, but there was something different now. A lightness in her posture, like when someone who has been carrying weight for a long time finally sets it down on the floor. "What happened to you?" I asked. My voice came out steady. "I don't know how." She was quiet for a moment. "Then I left and nobody noticed." It wasn't an accusation, just a statement, the kind that exists when a fact has been processed so many times it has lost its emotional charge, and only the structure remains. "Your family left first." A pause. "The doctor said I was getting better. My mom went home to get clean clothes, and I got up, went to the hallway. I wanted to see the window at the end of the corridor. the one that looked out over the square, because there was a pigeon that came every day, and I wanted to see if it was still there. She looked at the room's window. Closed, latched, facing the wrong side of the hospital, and I couldn't find my way back. I didn't know what to say. There's no training for this, no protocol. 7 years, I said finally. She looked at me with those eyes that were too deep. It feels longer. I spent the next 40 minutes sitting on the floor of room 14B with the chart folder in my lap and her sitting 2 meters away, her back against the wall beneath the window. She talked. I listened. I won't transcribe everything she said because some of it belongs only to that moment, that room, that specific space between what the hospital records and what it forgets. But I'll share the essentials because that's why I'm writing all of this. She had gotten lost in the hospital, not metaphorically, physically. A 7-year-old child who knew the room where she had spent weeks, but didn't know the rest of the building, who went looking for a pigeon and couldn't find her way back, who knocked on doors that didn't open, who called out to people who didn't hear her, and who, at a moment she couldn't pinpoint, stopped being the kind of thing hospital systems record and became the kind of thing systems can't categorize. But the system saw me today, she said. You saw me. I saw you. That didn't used to happen. I thought about the 3 words in the notes field. She was waiting. About the unknown user who had accessed the chart before me. About the vital sign at 4:30 a.m. What changed? She thought. A very adult expression on a 7-year-old's face. You, she said simply. I'm not going to pretend I understood everything that happened that night. I still don't understand it today. There are things that remained unanswered, gaps I could try to fill with theory or speculation, but that I prefer to leave open. Because honesty requires me to admit some kinds of knowledge lie beyond what we're equipped to process. What I know is this. When Daniel came back to the side hallway at 4:12 a.m. without Gary, who had been called to an incident on another floor, he found me standing outside room 14B with the door closed and the chart folder in my hand. Inside the room, nothing. No light, no shadow, no vital sign in the system. The physical chart was real. Daniel saw it. We took photos. I brought it out with me. There was no way it had been inside before our visits, because the room had been sealed and no one had logged access to the physical records room, where it should have been stored. The next morning, when the administration checked the records room, they found a folder labeled with Valentina Correa Lima's name, dated 2017. It was in order, in the right place, but the last page, the page with the child's handwriting, with the words, "Nobody saw me leave," was blank, as if it had never been written, or as if, having been read, it no longer needed to exist. I investigated what I could in the months that followed. I found a record of Valentina Correa Lima's admission in the hospital's digitized system. An incomplete version. No discharge recorded. Exactly like the physical folder. I found a family address in the old files. I wrote a letter. 3 weeks later, I received a phone call. It was the mother, Marcia. the voice of someone who has been carrying something for a long time. She told me Valentina had disappeared from her room in March of 2017, that the hospital had conducted an internal search, that the police had been notified, that weeks became months and months became years with no answer. The last thing she said to me was that she wanted to see the pigeon by the hallway window, Marcia said. I stayed silent. Did you find her? She asked. I thought about the expression in her eyes, the exhaustion, the lightness that appeared after I read the folder. Yes, I said. I think so. And is she okay? A pause that lasted longer than I planned. She seemed relieved. Marcia was quiet for a long moment. Thank you, she said finally. Thank you for not ignoring the report. After I hung up, I went to the system. Valentina Correa Lima's chart had been updated. Discharge field, October 25th, 2024. 7 years, 7 months, and 11 days after admission. Responsible for discharge, not listed. And in the notes field, in text that IT support confirmed had been inserted by no user in the system. 4 words. She found the pigeon. I still work at St. Benedict's. I still do the night shift. I still start every shift by opening the shift report. Still read every field. Still sign. But now I read differently. Now I read like someone who knows. That hospital systems record more than they can categorize. That the hallways at night hold more than seems to fit in the available square footage. That sometimes a name in a field that should be empty is just that. A name, a person, someone who went too long without being seen. Daniel still wears his earbuds, but sometimes when we pass the side hallway, he slows down just a little, just enough. Room 14B was renovated earlier this year. New wiring, fresh paint, reopened as a regular room with beds, mattresses, visitor chairs. It receives patients regularly now. Another nurse told me a few weeks ago that one of the children admitted there asked her mother not to close the window curtains. There's a pigeon out there, the child said. She keeps looking at me like she's waiting for someone. I didn't say anything when the nurse told me that, but I thought of Valentina and I smiled.